السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله الذي جعل الشمس والقمر حسبانا والنجم والشجر يسجدان، فضل زمانا على زمان كما فضل إنسانا على إنسان ومكانا على مكان. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وأعلانا وأولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. Welcome to Quranic Arabic Academy, Arabic Grammar Made Easy, lesson number 12b. ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد رسولا. In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to make al-fi'l al-madi feminine. In the last lesson, we have learned about the two types of jumla. Number one is al-jumlatul ismiyatu. Number two is al-jumlatul fi'liyatu. We started learning al-jumlatul fi'liyatu, and we have learned there are three types of fi'l. Number one, al-fi'l al-madi. Number two, al-fi'l al-mudari'. Number three, fi'l al-amr. We started with al-fi'l al-madi to make a jumla fi'liya. And we have learned that every fi'l, either it be fi'l madi or it be fi'l al-mudari' or it be fi'l al-amri, it needs a doer. Every fi'l must have a doer. And the doer is the subject, and in Arabic it is called al-fa'ilu. We'll be going through all these again, so let's move on inshallah. So yesterday, the last lesson we've learned the fi'l madi mudhakkar, or the examples we've learned that were the mudhakkar examples. In today's lesson, we'll know how to make fi'l madi feminine muannas. We've learned a verb. A verb means any word that gives the meaning of an action in relation to a tense. It has a meaning of a tense. Either it is in the past or present or future. So there are three types of fi'l. Number one, al-fi'l al-madi, and number two, al-fi'l al-mudari'. Number three, fi'l al-amri. Fi'l madi is the past tense, and fi'l mudari' we use for present tense and for the future tense. So one form of al-fi'l al-madi used for present and future. As I said, how would we translate present or future? From the context, we'll know which meaning to take. Fi'l al-amri, imperative, the command verb. Let's go through the 5 properties of a fi'l. We've learned there are 5 properties of a fi'l. Number one is zaman. It gives the meaning of a tense. We should know which tense the fi'l is. And we've learned the 3 tenses: al-fi'l al-madi, al-fi'l al-mudari', and al-fi'l al-amri. Fi'l al-amri will give us the meaning in the future, because command is the future. When you tell someone, do this, means in the future. Number 2, al-i'rab, which is the state. Every fi'l will have i'rab. Number 3, النوع, gender. In the last lesson, we've learned فعل ماضي مذكر. Today we'll be learning how to make فعل ماضي مؤنث. Then معلوم ومجهول. At the moment we are learning the معلوم, the active voice. That means the doer is known or the doer is mentioned in the sentence. مجهول, the doer is unknown or the doer is not mentioned in the sentence. And number 5, مثبت and منفي, affirmation and negation. At the moment we are doing all مثبت, جملة فعلية, مثبت, affirmation, the positive, and the منفي is negative. So these are the 5 properties of a فعل. We went through zaman, only 2, الفعل الماضي past tense, الفعل المضارع present and future tense. We also can add فعل الأمر here to give us only the future, the command verb. الإعراب, there's only 2 types of إعراب, مبني and معرب. So what are the فعلs are مبني? الفعل الماضي المبني, فعل الأمر is مبني. There's only one type of فعل which is معرب, and that is فعل المضارع. الفعل الماضي مبني. الفعل الماضي can be مبني in 3 ways. Number 1, مبني على الفتح. Number 2, مبني على الضم. Number 3, مبني على السكون. At the moment we are learning فعل ماضي مبني على الفتح. In the later lessons we'll be learning مبني على الضم and مبني على السكون. الفعل المضارع معرب. Remember this, فعل مضارع is always معرب. And again, it can be معرب in 3 ways. Number 1, it can be مرفوع. Number 2, it can be منصوب. Number 3, it can be مجزوم. فعل الأمر مبني can be مبني in 4 ways. Number 1, مبني على السكون. And the rest 3, as I said in the last lesson, we will learn them later in the later lessons. Let's go through very quickly what is verbal sentence, what is الجملة الفعلية. جملة الفعلية is a sentence which starts with a verb and gives information about the verb and who did the action. جملة فعلية must have 2 parts, the verb and the subject. In some cases, جملة اسمية can have more parts, like an object, an adverb, and circumstance. We'll be learning or adding these things slowly. At the moment, we just focusing on the فعل itself and the second part, which is the subject. The rules of الجملة الفعلية. Number 1, the فعل must agree the subject in gender. Number 2, the subject is called الفاعل. And number 3, إعراب of الفاعل is مرفوع. Always, whenever we see the fa'il in the sentence, we'll put in مرفوع case. Okay, so these are the rules to make جملة الفعلية. The فعل must agree the subject in gender. The fa'il is the subject is called the fa'il, and i'rab of fa'il is for. Let's recap quickly. In the past we did al-jumlatul ismiyatu. Jumlatul ismiya consists of two parts, mubtada and khabar, and these are the rules or the things, the properties of ism we've learnt. Mubtada is ma'rifa. The mubtada is marfu' in terms of i'rab. The mubtada, the naw, and the adad. The khabar is nakira. In terms of i'rab is marfu'. In terms of naw, it will match the mubtada. In terms of al-adad, it will match the mubtada. So from today we'll be going through al-jumlatul fi'liyatu. As we've learned, jumlatul fi'l has two parts. Always will start with a fi'l. There's jumla fi'liya. Always will start with a fi'l, then we'll be adding more slots and more parts. So these are the things we can add. At the moment we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, it could be more. Just let's start with these. We'll be adding one by one. Number 1, fa'il. Okay? Fail and then fa'il. And one thing must remember regarding fa'il, it must come after fail, always. So fa'il always comes after a fail. Now what is the i'rab? We've learned is marfu'un. Fa'ilun marfu'un. So with these two, only these two, we can make jumla fi'liya. With a fail and with a fa'il. Right? And slowly as we go in the lessons, we'll be adding more things to it. Al-fi'l al-madi, past tense. In a jumla fi'la, we must apply the properties of an ism and the properties of a fi'l. We went through this yesterday. Let's go through this very quickly. At-ta'yin, the fi'l doesn't have ta'yin. Fa'il, it depends. You can start with a ma'rifa or with a nakira. Az-zaman, the fi'l madi has zaman, and fa'il don't have zaman. I should have put the X there. Al-i'rab, as we've learned, fi'l madi is mabni, fa'il is marfu. And now, yesterday we did mudhakkar on the scale of fa'ala. Today we'll be doing the muannas on the scale of fa'alat. On the scale of fa'alat. A fa'il is muannas. Al-adad, fa'il is always mufrad, and the fa'il can be any. So this is the main thing we're learning today in this lesson. If the fa'il is muannas, the verb must come in its feminine form. What is the feminine form? This is there, fa'alat. This is the feminine form of fa'il. So if the fa'il is muannas, the verb must agree in gender. So the verb must come its feminine form. The feminine form of al-madi has a at-ta'u sakinah, the open ta with a sukoon at the end of a verb. The end of al-madi. So how to make fi'l madi feminine? Just add open ta with sukoon at the end of fi'l madi. So here we can say, for example, fa'ala is the fi'l madi. Add ta sakina at the end, becomes fa'alat. We have a feminine form of fi'l ماضي. On the left hand side, again, we have new verbs. الفعل الماضي فتح, to open or to give victory. ذهب, to go. صلح, to act righteously. بعث, to rise or to resurrect. جعل, to make, to place, to set up. Say one verb has many meanings. جمع, together, to collect. نفع, profit. لعن, to curse. رفع, to rise. سحر, to enchant or to bewitch. ركع, to bow. منع, to prevent, to prohibit, to stop, to forbid. So learn these fails again. As I said, the default or every fail, we must learn them, and they are مذكر default. Fails are always in مذكر, and they are default. Okay. All right. Okay, now we understand how to make فعل ماضي feminine. Just adding the التاء الساكنة at the end of فعل ماضي. So let's start with some examples. We'll be starting with a فعل ماضي feminine form because we already know the file will be مؤنث. So here we have the small chart. It will help us to apply the rules of الجملة الفعلية وفعل الماضي. ذهبت. As soon as we see ذهبت, we know it is a feminine form of فعل الماضي because we can see the تاء الساكنة and we need the file. We need the file. The إعراب of file is مرفوع. البنت. So ذهبت البنت. ذهبت البنت. Let's do the تركيب straightforward. ذهبت فعل. Here we can do something. We don't need to mention ماضي. We don't need to mention مضارع. Just say فعل. ذهبت فعل. البنت فاعل. ذهبت فعل. البنت فاعل. So ذهب, we just learned ذهب means to go, and because we're doing past tense, the girl went. The girl went. Right? Now the Arab, first we start with the fail, then we do the Arab of the file. So before that, here a new thing we added, which is the التاء الساكنة. We need to mention that as well. So this is why I have 3 boxes here. Let's start. ذهبت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح لا محل له من الإعراب. As we discussed in the last lesson, that fail don't have any place in the sentence. It doesn't have any slots on position. Some do, because sometimes the fail will have slots in the sentence. We will learn that later. At the moment, فعل ماضي has no i'rab in the sentence. Next thing is the ta. Sorry, I missed it. Should have done that first. Okay. والتاء تاء التأنيث الساكنة. This ta is, we call it تاء التأنيث, ta from oneness. تاء التأنيث, and it is sakin. It is a harf. Harfun. That's how we mention, okay? والتاء تاء التأنيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. We've learned in the past, all huruf has no place in the sentence. In الجملة الاسمية, when we did كان وأخواتها, and when we made the كانت into مؤنث, you remember we added the ta الساكنة, we made it كانت. Then we just started, we just said التاء تاء التانيث, and that's why we left it there, because we just started then. Maybe a little bit we understood, but now we understand. We'll be adding more things. Okay. So التاء تاء التانيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. And البنت is straightforward. We done this. فاعل. In the جملة اسمية we mentioned as a مبتدا, because in جملة اسمية البنت became مبتدا, but in جملة فعلية it'll become فاعل. البنت فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. Right? All right. Here, one thing to understand. We did this in جملة اسمية. Just again, recap. When the fa'il is معرفة with the lam, لام التعريف, معرفة باللام or معرف باللام, because the lam will have a sukun, and also التاء الساكنة is also sukun. Now this is called اجتماع الساكنين, two sukun coming together. اجتماع الساكنين, two sukun coming together. So in Arabic language, two sukun cannot come together. If it does, we need to do something about it. So let's do something here as we've learned before. This ta sakina, we must put a kasra to continue. Put a kasra to continue. Now we can say ذهبت البنت. ذهبت البنت. Understood? So when the file is معرف باللام or معرفة معرف باللام, and if the file is مؤنث, put a kasra. One thing. Number two, the fail ذهب is the original, right? ذهب. The ba is the last letter, and it has a fatha. So we say فعل ماض مبني على الفتح, because the last letter is the ba. Now this ba we can see, it's apparent, it's clear. Okay, it's clear. We, after al-fath, we write al-zahir. We say على الفتح الظاهر. The reason is sometimes this fatha will be muqaddar. will be assumed. So this is how we need to write الظاهر. This is the proper way to do the i'rab. Yeah? If you don't write الظاهر, again, it doesn't matter. But when it is muqaddar, then you have to write muqaddar. Because there are some places the فعل ماضي is مبني على الفتح المقدر. So I think it's better to write over here when it is ظاهر. Just write it. So now the Arab will be ذهبت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح الظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب. والتاء تاء التانيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. البنت فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفع الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. Understood? Which one? Okay. So how do you pronounce R-A-I-S-E? Rise or raise? Raise. Okay, sorry. Yes, raise. So yes, بعث is to raise. Okay. The Arab of ta should also change. The Arab of ta. Yes, because it's original, just keep it as التاء الساكنة. Or you can say التاء here تاء التانيث تاء التانيث الساكنة. I'm going to say that مكسورة. You can say that مكسورة. We're just adding this ta temporarily. Okay? You don't need to. Just keep as it is, the habit. Keep it simple. So التاء تاء التانيث الساكنة. Originally it is sukun. It is sakina. So just keep as it is. Maybe if I find something else later on, we'll change it. Next, ja'alat. So ja'ala to make, ja'alat because is because that is a temporary kasra. Normally we do not need to mention that. We just leave it as it is, the original kasra. Al-imra'atu ja'alat. Al-imra'atu. Over here we can do the same thing. So let's go through the first تركيب. جعلت فعل and al-imra'atu fa'il. جعل is to make. You can say the woman made. And i'rab is جعلت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح الظاهر as we just discussed لا محل له من الإعراب. والتاء تاء التانيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. الامرأة فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفع الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. So let's change this one as well. Kasra and here. جعلت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح الظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب، والتاء تاء التأنيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. الامرأة فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفع الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. And I mention one thing here, just remember, any ism that starts with a hamza, starts with the alif or the hamza. Sometimes this hamza is called hamzatul wasl, and sometimes it is called hamzatul qata'. So this imra'atun, the hamza there, imra'atun, is hamzatul wasl. Means if there is no alif lam before it, for example, say ja'alatim. Sorry, there's a kasra on the other. I just missed. Yeah, imra should here. For example, if we take the alif lam away, so this is how it is. So if we have no word before it, just a default, we put a kasra to start off, imra'atun. But if we have something before it, this hamza is called hamzatul wasl. It won't have any haraka on it. So we say ja'alatimra'atun. You have to put a tanwin there. Ja'alatimra'atun. But when it has alif lam, so we write the hamza without the hamza at the bottom. So this is hamzatul wasl. If it's hamzatul qata', then yes, we write the hamza with the hamza at the bottom. If it's hamzatul qata', means you have to pronounce that hamza. But because the original, this hamza is hamzatul wasl, then we don't write the hamza at the bottom. That's the alif and the kasra. So ja'alatil imra'atu. Put the sukun back on the lam. Ja'alat. Okay, so this is how we do the i'rab. جعلت فعل الماضي المبني على الفتح الظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب، والتاء تاء التأنيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. الامرأة فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفع الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. The screen not showing fully. Yes, it is just the last line. Still we can see a little bit. So I think I will have to lift everything up next time, inshallah. Okay. Because I added this middle line here. I mean, when I see the slides, I have plenty of space at the bottom left. I don't know why that part is not showing. It is showing only up to the writing over here on the video. Showing only up to here on the video. But on my screen, I have plenty of space at the bottom. I think I need to rise everything up or raise everything up. For mabni, we don't use ala akhirih. It is default, isn't it? Mabni is at the end. Ala akhirih means on the last letter. So because it's already understood, it has to be at the end. For mabni, we don't say it. Okay. For mu'rab, yes, we do say ala akhirih. For mabni, no, just al-zahir, because apparent. Sometime when there are not possible muqaddar, for those we don't need to al-zahir. For example, هذا is mabni ala al-fath. Over there we don't need to say zahir because it doesn't have muqaddar. Okay? But because fail sometimes has muqaddar, so we just mention zahir. Again, if you don't need to, it doesn't matter. If you do, it's okay. Like هؤلاء, for example. هؤلاء مبني على الكسر. Over there, we don't need to add zahir because it doesn't have muqaddar. It's only one. هؤلاء, only one. Understand? Yes, when there is, for the same thing, when there is muqaddar, then we mention zahir. For فعل ماضي, there is muqaddar, we mention zahir. Okay. Right, let's do a few more examples. Over here will be Jama Mukassar. Jama Mukassar. As we've learned, the fa'il, the adad is always mufrad. Always mufrad. ذهبت. For al-mufrad ism or al-mufrad fa'il, we use ذهبت. For muthanna, we still use ذهبت. For jama, still ذهبت. So an-nisa'u is the plural of imra'atun. Imra'atun, plural, nisa'un. And tarkib is very straightforward now. The women went, jama. ذهبت النساء, the women went. Again, tarkib is Arab is same. ذهبت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح ظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب. As I said, sometime فعل ماضي will have محل in Arab, and فعل مضارع as well. فعل مضارع will have محل in the Arab. We will learn those later, but for now, as we can see here, there is no عامل before it. There is no عامل. Sometime before فعل ماضي there is an عامل, then it will have a محل. فعل مضارع, there will be عامل, means a governing particle before فعل مضارع, so there will be محل. As long as it doesn't have any عامل, as long as it doesn't have any حروف العاملة before, always will be لا محل له من الإعراب. والتاء all the um, the فعل المؤنث on the scale of فعلت will never change. We do the exactly the تركيب the Arab same way. التاء تاء التانيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. Over here, because we are mentioning حرف, then we say لا محل له. If you don't mention حرف, because ta is مؤنث, you can say تاء التانيث الساكنة لا محل لها. You make that ha into مؤنث. لا محل لها من الإعراب. But we want to be sure and make sure ta is a harf. Just mention it. Just mention the harf over here. And you say لا محل له من الإعراب. النساء فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. Next, ركعت. ركعت. Because I already have a fa'il, so I put the kasra there. المسلمتان is مثنى. So ركعت المسلمتان. ركع means to bow. So تركيب ركع فعل المسلمتان فاعل. Translation: the two female Muslim bowed. The two female Muslim bowed. إعراب ركعت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح الظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب. عندي تاء التانيث ساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. المسلمتان فاعل مرفوع. What is the علامة of this مرفوع المثنى؟ ألف. Yes, الألف لأنه مثنى. Okay. Okay, you have answered some of the questions. Right. Now let's move on. One more thing left. Jama Muannas Salim. Again, the file is always mufrad. ذهبت. فذهبت الطالبات. ذهبت الطالبات. ذهبت فعل. الطالبات فاعل. Translation: the female students went. Female student went. إعراب ذهبت فعل ماض مبني على الفتح الظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب. والتاء تاء التانيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. الطالبات فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. So we've learned the إعراب of جمع المؤنث السالم is in مرفوع case is with the ضمة. الطالبات فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. Okay. So we've done everything. We've done the example of al-mufrad muannas. We've done the example of jama mukassar. Because jama mukassar, the Arab is same as mufrad. Then we've done the example of muannas al-muthanna. Then we've done the example of muannas jama salim. What's left? What's left? Anything left? Okay, understood so far? We know how to make Jumla Fi'liya with just two main slots, which is the fail and the fa'il. If the fa'il is mudhakkar, we bring the fail, the mudhakkar form of it. The default of every fail is mudhakkar. Then we have to make, if the fa'il is muannas, we bring the fail, the muannas form of it. And how to make a fail madi muannas, just adding ta as-sakina at the end of fail madi. That's it. We have al-jumlatul fi'liyatu. Understood? Okay. One more thing, if you do remember, when do we use muannas? One more thing left. Who can remember? When do we use either khabar muannas, or now we can use fail muannas? When do we use muannas? Mufrad. Muannas mufrad. Yes. Yes. If the jama mukassar is ghayrul aqil. Let's do that as well. I didn't forget, I remembered. Yes. ذهبت الكلاب. كلب جمع كلاب. It is جمع مكسر غير العاقل. The fail will be used مؤنث. فذهبت الكلاب. ذهبت fail, الكلاب فاعل. Sorry, was the so dogs went. From our verb list, I couldn't find any verb to use with Jama Mukasa Ghair Aqil. So this is example came in my mind to take the fail from the list what we have today, to take Dhahaba from there and use, because other, for example, Rafa'a cannot use any, couldn't find any example Jama Mukassar Ghair Aqil to use with Jama'a or Raka'a, or what are the other fails? Sahara, Rafa'a, Ba'atha, Fataha. So this is example of ذهب الكلاب. ذهبت الكلاب. Okay, so Arabic is exactly the same. ذهبت فعل. All we have to need is mention the fail is mentioned in the sentence, and if there is no ta sakina, we don't mention that. If there is ta sakina, we mention that. ذهبت فعل الماض مبني على الفتح ظاهر لا محل له من الإعراب. والتاء التاء التانيث الساكنة حرف لا محل له من الإعراب. الكلاب فاعل مرفوع. So it is جمع مكسر and it is غير عاقل, but what is the slot coming in? It is file. The slot is file, and the file is, we've learned, is always marfu. We say marfu, and what is the sign of marfu? الضمة الظاهرة. We can see it, and it is at the end على آخره. Okay, so this is the end of lesson 12b. I hope you understood how to use فعل ماضي for مذكر file, and how to use فعل ماضي for مؤنث file. Before we end the lesson, any questions? Yes, non-human broken plurals is considered mufrad muannas. Mufrad muannas. Okay, so we can end the lesson here. Inshallah, we'll see in the next lesson. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. This is the dua our Nabi Sallam taught us. So in the gathering, when the gathering ends, you read this dua. In the gathering, if we made any mistakes, we are asking forgiveness from Allah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. In the gathering, any gathering, we read this dua. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. You can add all these. So سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.